Hey there, Cybercrime Junkies. Got a question that keeps you up at night, or ever wish you could hear from a specific guest, or have a true cybercrime story you want us to investigate? You can now text our studio directly at 904-867-4466. Don't be a stranger. Text us at 904-867-4466. Don't miss the chance to be part of the conversation. Text us direct at 904-867-4466. Come join us as we dive deeper behind the scenes of security and cybercrime today, interviewing top leaders from around the world and sharing true cybercrime stories to raise awareness. But first, a huge thank you to all of our executive co-producers who subscribed to our Prime membership and fueled our growth. So please help us keep this going by subscribing for free to our YouTube channel and downloading our episodes on Apple or Spotify podcasts so we can continue to bring you more of what matters. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and now the show. Good morning, and welcome to Cybercrime Junkies. I am your host, David Morrow. In the studio today, that's my illustrious, fantabulous co-host, which is the words I got from my insincere things to say to coworkers app. That's a really good app that I use. It is fantastic. We are joined today by Travis DeForge and Christian Scott. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you guys for having us. We appreciate it.
Great. I am really excited. We are aware of your work both professionally and in your passions, your projects to help the security community.
Travis and myself currently work at GoVanguard Security / Gotham Security. I'm our Chief Operating Officer and Chief Information Security Officer. In regards to our side projects and what we've been doing for the cybersecurity community and helping people break into cybersecurity, we've had two main initiatives and projects that we've been investing a lot of time and resource into. One is Cyber Judo, where Travis and myself do weekly training sessions with folks. It's very candid and off the cuff, and a mix between a little bit of an instructional type of feel and then opening up to discussions with people in real time so that they can kind of pick our brain. Right? And then the other initiative that we have for helping people break into cybersecurity and also build their leadership skills is Enclave for Generous, which myself and my partner Blake Shalem works with me on, and creating that type of content, and which it's got a little kind of like codified into like a wiki and knowledge base. It's really easy for people to find and to navigate through and search through various databases, guides, tips, tricks, all that
really
kind of
cool.
stuff.
I know who Blake is through LinkedIn, but how do you guys know each other, and what gave you the impetus to come up with Enclave Regenerous? Because it's really cool. It's really interesting.
That's a fantastic question, because it continues with the lead-in, right, of like the introduction of myself and like getting started in cybersecurity. Because when initially I got started in cybersecurity-ish, right, it was very much from like a technology-heavy background, right? When I was really young, doing like software development. When I was about 14 years old, I got into programming, and then I thought to myself, hey, you know what I'd hate doing for a career? I would. By the way, can I swear? Is it all right for me to swear?
Of course. We'll let Apple know, but before it's released as a podcast later.
Okay. So then, as we kind of like dug into it, I was just really enthusiastic, engaged with it, and soaking it all up. And I really loved the red team side of things. And as time continued forward, we essentially merged forces between our current firm, GoVanguard, and Gotham Security. And so Blake and myself essentially collaborate on a day-to-day basis of, project management, customer relationship management, team and culture building, and all that kind of stuff. And so Travis and myself on the Cyber Judo side, we had it where I've been mentoring people in my free time for a long time now, for probably about 6 years. And Travis started getting into it as well. And we thought, like, hey, wait, why don't we join forces? Like, you're working on these nights and I'm working on these nights. Here, let's just kind of collaborate and just get it all together. And we're like, hey, you know what? Why don't we like put like these up on like, LinkedIn and spread the word and like the more impact that we have, the greater, And so that's kind of how they both like kicked off. It was very organic. And neither of those like initiatives that we have are really associated to, GoVanguard Security or Gotham Security in a sense of like, we do this as a project of love, right? We don't run ads. We don't ask for money. We don't have any fees. We don't sell merch or anything like that. Travis and myself legitimately are just kind of interested in helping people avoid the pitfalls and all the bullshit that we had to kind of go through as we got into cybersecurity. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. That's a great give back. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love it. Yeah. So, yeah, that's fantastic.
When I did software development, I did a lot of graphics design and web design work when I was younger. So one of the large chip manufacturing firms that exists in the world, I helped actually develop their logo. And they're based right out of Malta, New York, called Global Foundries.
Okay.
And I did that when
Let's go down a rabbit hole. So hang on. Let's go down a rabbit hole. So how did one of the largest chip manufacturers, with other resources and their global connections, go, we need a logo? Somebody get Christian. Like, how did that happen?
I was part of it too. So I was part of a firm in the Saratoga area, and Saratoga in New York is very known for being a very artsy, sophisticated area, that kind of stuff.
Yes,
and so I was working for a small business at the time, and the reason why Global Foundries chose that business is because they were basically incentivized by New York State, right? To
to pick somebody local.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I just happened to be the right place at the right time. I'm not talented by any means, but when it comes to our
Yeah, we should get along just fine.
Yeah, nor are we. We were like, I'm a little peek behind the curtain. I'm a huge true crime fan because of my background, right? And one of my favorite podcasts is Crime Junkies. And so we do cybersecurity. We were thinking of starting a podcast. We had a prior one on brands, brandology and stuff. And then I was like, well, there's got to be, Mark and I were on the phone or on a Zoom or something. I'm like, well, there's got to be Cybercrime Junkies. And we looked it up and like, nobody has it. So I'm like, I'm registering the trademark on the URL. That afternoon, we got we shipped it over our podcast. Like, we did it immediately. So a lot of it is just having the right idea right at the right time.
Exactly. For the Enclave stuff, Blake and myself collaborated really closely on the design and the feel. But, when it comes to, making it happen and slapping the website together, certainly I'm a little bit more on that side. As for Cyber Judo, that has a bit of a different feel and it's very wiki-like. You're kind of to be interactive and easy to read.
Research-like, and it's really useful. Like, they're different feels. But I'll tell you, the content is, and I'm telling you, if you're technical and you want to advance your technical skills, like, both of them have phenomenal resources. But when you are just doing what you're doing and you want to learn all of the best practices, the current things, some of the trends, like, you guys really, you almost gamify it for people. Like, it has the gamification feel. And I tell our company, Mark and I talk about it all the time, if I could create a mobile app or a video game that could just help people have fun and learn about cybersecurity, oh my gosh, I would do that 24/7. I would never sleep. Like, that's
a good idea you got there. Actually, Travis had an initial background when he was really, really young and when we first met in mixed martial arts. And so that was kind of like the aspiration behind it, that kind of stuff.
Very cool.
Yeah,
I'm not judo, but I did teach martial arts for about a decade before I joined the service.
So yeah, you are in the Central Plains area,
North Dakota.
Right, North Dakota, which actually has worse weather than
Chicago. So I definitely come from a much different upbringing into the industry than Christian does. I don't come from a tech background at all. My undergrad was actually in Mandarin Chinese. And
how did that happen?
Mandarin Chinese. Now, were you already in the military when you were getting your undergrad?
I was on an Army ROTC scholarship, so I had the opportunity to do a tactical language at University of Vermont, which they offered two of them, Chinese and Russian. I got to choose.
Okay.
Chose Chinese, spent some time in China, met my wife in Shanghai, and graduated. I finished as an active duty military intelligence officer. You would think that with Chinese language and working in intelligence, I would have gone over to the Pacific Command. So naturally, I was placed by the government in Eastern Europe with a company full of Russian linguists.
Of course.
Right. Why not?
Because that
makes sense.
So we did things like SIGINT, signals intelligence, electronic intelligence, open source intelligence, human intelligence, all that kind of things. And it was a fusion center. So we're bringing all those things together. And it was really interesting to learn about those different forms of intelligence, but also see how they can aggregate to form a bigger picture. It was actually the Army's version of a red team to certify that was ready to deploy. So when I worked over there, I was actually on the red team, and I was in charge of doing information operations. So misinformation campaigns, a lot like what pen testers would call social engineering at scale, doing a tactical deception operation. We got married, we had a baby on the way, so we're planning on getting out of the service. I've been to like 28 countries in 4 years and moved 9 times, and we're kind of sort of looking at options. I spun up a LinkedIn, which I had like years ago and never looked at again. Reconnected with Christian, who I actually met years before. And I learned about this really awesome program that the Department of Defense has called the Career Skills Program. It's called SkillBridge.
So let's shift gears here. Christian, give us your top thoughts and top suggestions on somebody wanting to break into the field.
Fantastic question. I think building off of what Travis was noting in regards to like he's particularly familiar with pen testing, right? One of the things that usually people are attracted to first is the pen testing, and everybody thinks about pen testing, and that's the sexy thing in the room, right? When we talk about cybersecurity and information security. And so I guess my first big pro tip to folks is know that cybersecurity and information security is more than pen testing. And actually, Cyber Judo, we did a whole session on this, and we have a page on it about resume writing and career skills tips. And we got this big diagram of like, hey, here are all the different cybersecurity domains, for cyber threat intelligence, right? And, security architecture and governance, risk, and compliance, right? There are so many different elements. Don't just narrow yourself down to something that's just the pen testing or just this or just that, right? And as you then explore what potential career paths might lie out there, you can kind of line that up to your strengths and your weaknesses. So, for example, somebody who might have better soft skills might be in a better role for, let's say, information security or cybersecurity project management, right? Or sales, right? And then lastly, having mentees, right? Even if that starts with your mom or your spouse or your kids talking about even fundamental things, right? Of like being aware of how much information you put on social media, protecting your workstation, your mobile device, that kind of stuff. The reason why having a mentee is important, even when you're entry level to cybersecurity, is because it helps you build your own leadership skills, presentation skills, right?
So
and foundation to improve to you.
That's really good. And so for listeners, the people that'll listen to this in a month as a podcast, some of them aren't even in cybersecurity. But this advice and the advice that we get from people in this community applies to every industry. That's brilliant, Christian. And I'll tell you why, because you don't know a topic until you have to articulate it, right? And to articulate it, you have to simplify it, right? Because to have a mentee, you have to be able to explain it in English, right? I think there's great sophistication in simplicity. I think, think about brand slogans. Think about the dairy industry tried to get us to drink milk for decades, telling us it was really good for us, part of a 4-course aspect of our diet, and it might have been a lie, but they still were doing it. But the point is that it kept going down, sales kept going down. Then they came up with Got Milk, and sales rocketed up. Doesn't even talk about the product; it talks about the absence of the product, right? But it's brilliant because it talks about the need. It identifies exactly when you need milk. Like, when does somebody buy that product? It's when they go into the refrigerator, it's not there, right? They need it for their coffee, they need it for whatever. They identified that. And by doing that with these complex ideas as a mentee, like having a mentee, it allows you to synthesize what you're learning.
They tell folks all the time at our Cyber Judo sessions, that kind of stuff, is at the end of the day, you need to be able to communicate to business leaders in their terms, right? And how it's actually going to impact the organization and how it relates back to the top line and the bottom line for the organization. Throwing jargon at people is not going to be very productive or helpful. If you want to orchestrate real change and improve an organization's cybersecurity posture, that means that what you need to do is take the opportunity to understand who you're communicating with and boil it down, break it into the action items, right? And then provide them a roadmap to success, right? So like our firm, which this is not a sales stick or anything like that, but one of the reasons why we're a small but mighty, boutique firm, and we do pen testing for tons of multi-billion-dollar companies and all that kind of stuff, is because they love the simplicity in the pen testing report, where it's not focused on the vulnerabilities and the weakness and just like, oh, go fix that and go fix this. It provides a roadmap, right, to success, and it breaks it down into action items where executive management's like, oh, I get that, I understand that. That makes a lot of sense. Right. And then I would say for the third big point is, when people are getting into cybersecurity, a good way that you can help motivate yourself and really soak it up and immerse yourself is start to apply it to your personal life first, right? Which means think about all the information you have out on the internet and that kind of stuff, right?
And we've done sessions in the past on setting up your home network or poking at out-of-the-box routers and all that.
David, we had one of the viewers, Joshua, had a question. You may want to pull that up and see what Travis and Christian say.
So Joshua Shutten-Dodd asked, any recommendations for cyber forensics as somebody wanting to go into uni apprenticeship in the UK?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Imagine setting yourself apart from the competition because your organization is always secure, always available, and always ahead of the curve. That's NetGain Technologies, your total one source for cybersecurity, IT support, and technology planning. Picture picking up the phone and having decades of technology and cybersecurity expertise on the other end, like a bat phone, but with a team of specialists ready to make your business faster, easier, and more profitable. Since 1984, NetGain Technologies has designed, built, and implemented customized technology solutions for businesses of all kinds. They offer a clear roadmap and security plan to keep threats at bay, all at a predictable, affordable monthly cost. NetGain Technologies supports organizations across the United States, providing the benefits of a fully staffed in-house IT department and security team at a fraction of the cost. Get peace of mind. Get competitive. Get NetGain. Contact NetGain today at 844-777-6278 or reach out online at netgainit.com. That's netgainit.com and get ahead of your competition today.
Ooh, that's a really fantastic.
That is a really good question. This is why we do it live, man. Like I love that question is not coming out of Morrow or Mosher, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, no.
So Travis has the more conventional, again, certifications path, that kind of stuff. As I was elaborating to just a little bit earlier, is I came from a background of when I was really young, getting into computers and software development and just kind of tearing apart shit, right? And so my recommendations are really going to come from a more focused on the skills, focused on learning it, right, type of background, not necessarily certification. So I do not have any certifications and in mind, particularly around cyber forensics. So my apologies to that. But in regards to things to play with and things to leverage and whatnot, what I would highly recommend is this. So I would probably start out with either grabbing an old computer, old device, right, or making a device, right, and setting it up, right, pull the hard drive out, right, and then what you can do is get a write blocker off of Amazon or that kind of stuff, right, and so you could start to forensically image, right, without manipulating the original data on the hard drive, right, image it, and then now take that image and hey, can you get that mounted up into a virtual machine, right, to start analyzing it in real time and performing dynamic analysis on it, or get familiar with tools like Optery is probably one of my favorite tools. It's open source and it's free. It's very thorough and effective. And you can mount your forensic image to that and start sorting through it and getting a good feel for what type of insights you can get from that. I would also say getting familiar with some of my favorite tools being like Loki is a really great one, especially because it has like YARA rules that are built in for looking at the file system for any types of interesting indicators of compromise and any type of hashes that might be associated with malicious actor events. But those would be some of the just kind of initial pro tips there.
State the names of those devices, how people can find them. And then you also mentioned something about YARI, and I want to ask you, what does that mean for listeners? Later on, he's scrounging around down below. I think he's looking for the cache from that bank.
I got my forensic kit right here, so I'll provide the specific name of the write blocker device that I use.
So for listeners, he's like pulling out like a bag of tricks.
Right.
A friggin' magician. It's got like there's a rabbit back there, I think. No.
Yeah, right. So I got a CRU WeebTech Forensic UltraDoc. This is really fantastic. It's a really
What does that do? What does that do? It looks like an old floppy disk.
It allows you to mount up various types of media like hard drives and all that kind of stuff for forensic analysis. And it's what's called a write blocker that prevents essentially you as a forensic analyst from
overwriting the actual data.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you don't affect, quote unquote, the crime scene, right?
Right.
So pick
Oh,
up one of these.
cool.
I would say to start with a great open source tool. It's called Optery. So I would start with leveraging that, and then I would also get familiar with some other open source scripts and tools. A big one's called Loki, and that has Yarrow rules built into it, and it does a lot of other cool things.
And what are Yarrow rules? Explain to us what those are.
Yeah, so Yarrow rules are essentially a rule set for identifying various hashes and indicators of compromise on a file system that a malicious actor might leave behind as they gain access to a particular workstation or server, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, breadcrumbs, smoking guns. It's fingerprints left at the scene, basically.
Exactly. So the Yarrow rules will help you find those types of things.
That's what we do. We simplify things because my litmus test is the glazed look that Mark gets, and as soon as I see that, I'm like, let's explain it to him.
Yeah. If it's not digestible data, then it's not going down.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I could be a little bit like Carrot Top sometimes when I pull out like my tools. I'm like, oh, I got a tool for that. Let me get that.
I love it.
You know?
I love that analogy. That's really good.
That's phenomenal.
The next
So,
step, your job,
Creates a great visual to podcast.
Travis,
Joshua, there is once you got those tools, you're starting to play with it, you're starting to learn, get those hands-on experiences. That's really good. You also need to let people who you're applying to know that you know things too. So a good way to go about that is to start doing some write-ups, do some guides, post it on his GitHub of just the different labs that he was doing, the different
that's
things he was
great
playing
point.
with. Just do little walkthroughs. They don't have to be complicated. Get that up there. One, it will show that he's using something that everybody uses like GitHub. It's demonstrating a little bit of his writing capability and that he's really interested in poking with these things in his free time. Then take all that material and start sharing it out on LinkedIn because other people are going to be looking for those same kind of
Exactly.
That's a really good point.
It's going to be a lot easier to get that first interview when they can Google
Let's see what you've done.
all the cyber forensic stuff that you've been doing.
So from the business perspective and the career perspective, two things I want to point out. What you guys were just saying was brilliant, okay? And the two most significant things that I always try and help people with when they're entering into, I don't care if it's cybersecurity, you want to get into GRC, whatever it is, right? However you want to break into the field, whatever it is developing that self-brand, right? And LinkedIn is the phenomenal platform to do it in. And while you will certainly create a GitHub and post your technical findings there, that's the technical aspect. Technical people will go to GitHub, right? But people that would hire you won't necessarily, right? And so how do you bridge that gap? And one of the best suggestions I would always have is not only just to post that as original content, like, hey, everybody, have you ever wondered about this? Well, I did an experiment, and here's a link to my findings on GitHub. But LinkedIn has a phenomenal newsletter opportunity, right?
Yeah.
You can create your own newsletter, get subscribers. It's built into LinkedIn. And you can copy and paste what you've done in GitHub and just address always think of things like,
I mean, one of the things I tell people all the time is like, we'll have a pen testing report, and a lot of times I'm like, hey, this is something that you can then take to your customers who are asking about your cybersecurity posture, right?
Nice.
And that's going to help institute good trust with your customers, help reduce contracting friction, right? Which means that it's going to increase your revenue stream, right? And at the end of the day, then they see the pen testing report not just as a piece of technical insight, but also as a marketing deliverable and instrument.
Right. Why is that?
That's a good
Because at
point.
the end of the day, nobody wants to do business with people that are going to lose their stuff. Right? Like, come on. Like, we don't want to do business with, like, everything everybody does is essentially commoditized, right? You like a jacket, you can buy a jacket anywhere. I'd like to buy a jacket from a place that's not going to ruin my FICO score today. Can I do that? Like, you know what I mean? Can I buy a jacket from a place that's not going to, compromise and file a false tax return for my kid? Can we do that? Right? That's what security boils down to. And so by being able to work with organizations, just like you said, Christian, that have demonstrated that they care about their customers' data, right? It means they care about their customers because they avoid the perils of technology. So that's really good. And building an internal business case is so important, right? It'll help you break in and it'll really help you in interviews too.
Oh yeah.
So in some of your advice on resume writing and things like that, you guys have resources on that. Is that you guys can provide us those links and we can put those in the show?
Yeah, we definitely want to put those in the show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna hit you with a denial service attack of resources. Okay.
I love it.
Well, hey man, I'm protected by my Comcast router thing. So I am locked solid. So
Well, this was really good stuff, guys. This I found this very useful, and it's great to see such leadership for the community. You know, as big as IT feels is a global, domain. When you get on LinkedIn and start sharing some of these resources and start joining some of these groups, I encourage everybody listening and watching to follow Christian and Travis. It's a lot of good information out there that is, as David said, there's a lot of people willing to jump in and help and share and guide in a moment's notice. So this was really good, guys. I really appreciate you guys coming in for this.
no, absolutely fantastic. And Travis and Christian, this will not be our last conversation.
No, not at all. I got about a dozen more
We're going to reach out after this, and we'll have other collaborations.
Attaboy, and Ryan Johnson. Look at that. He dropped the URL right in for everybody.
He dropped the URL right in the chat.
Now, by the way, one of the things, just as like a side tip for people breaking into cybersecurity, and speaking of Ryan Johnson, because I think he's a really good illustrative example of the perfect type of mentee, right? And the perfect type of mentee are, like you guys were saying, folks who engage and interface on social media, right? And not just posts and comments, that kind of stuff, but some of the coolest things that I've gotten out of folks like Ryan is they'll just shoot me a message on our side hey, what are your thoughts on this? Hey, what wireless adapters do you use for your Wi-Fi?
I love it because it shows that while you go offline and you're busy at work and stuff, they're thinking about it. They've got a question for you, and they trust you enough to reach out to you, and that's what it's all about.
And I would highly encourage that anyone who connects with, Travis and myself, hey, you guys can certainly send us questions off the side, all that kind of stuff. And what I would recommend is, hey, when you get a huge spiel from me of all my little tidbits and details and how enthusiastic I am about cybersecurity and providing insight, take that and then go share that with other folks too.
That's fantastic. So Christian, Scott, Travis DeForge, thank you so much for
this was great stuff
today. We will be talking again, I promise you. So this is really, really, really fun. You guys have classes every Wednesday as well, and we will have links in the show notes for people to connect with you guys. So, all right. So everybody, check these guys out. Connect with them on LinkedIn. Check out their information, their YouTube channel, their websites, their work. Thank you guys so much for not just joining us today, but everything that you do for the security.
Yeah, thank you for what you contribute to the community.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Well, that wraps this up. Thanks for joining, everybody. Hope you got value out of digging deeper behind the scenes of security and cybercrime today. Please don't forget to help keep this going by subscribing free to our YouTube channel at Cybercrime Junkies Podcast, and download and enjoy all of our past episodes on Apple and Spotify podcasts so we can continue to bring you more of what matters. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and we thank you for joining us.